Hello, and welcome to the Commander's Forge podcast. My name is Andrew Bentley. The Commander's Forge is going to be the spot where I can talk about community issues, different deck techs, and a whole variety of different topics. I don't want to limit myself to any one thing. I'm here to talk about Commander. Now, I want to start with a little bit about myself. I am 29. I worked in food service for 10 years, and I'm currently building airplane parts. I've been playing Magic since 2011, and Commander since 2014, and I've dabbled in other formats. I did play Legacy, Modern, Standard for a little bit, but I've always come back to Commander. Now, the plan for the podcast is to have a release schedule of either once a week or possibly once every other week. I'm still working out those details. But I really wanted to just sit down and kind of give you an idea of what I'm going to talk about. And today that topic is the modal double-faced cards from Zendikar Rising. I've seen different debates on whether they can replace lands or whether they should replace spells or how many you would need to replace a land. That's not the conversation I'm here to have. I just really like them. I like the utility you have of being able to either play a spell or a land. That's all there is to it. Take Bala Ged Recovery. It's either a 3-mana regrowth or it's a tapped forest. If you don't need a land, you cast the spell. If you don't need the spell, you play a land. I really, really like that mechanic. Though I'm not the biggest fans of the ones that are lands on both sides. But a few of the other ones that I really like are Kazul's Fury. It's a 3-mana fling. That's pretty self-explanatory. You sack a creature and deal damage. Or the Glasspool Mimic, which is a 3-mana shapeshifting rogue that clones. Or, respectively, they are a tapped mountain or a tapped island. The upside is phenomenal. And yes, I understand that they're not all playable or the greatest in Commander. I honestly don't really see a downside to them. In particular, the mythics are phenomenal. Which my favorite of the mythics is the black one, Agadeem's Awakening. And I think the thing I like about them most is also the fact that you can pay 3 life to have the land side come in untapped. And the number of times I've lost a game because a land came in tapped and I couldn't cast a spell. Yeah, I wouldn't mind paying 3 life. But I think that's enough of me gushing about those cards. Another thing that I would like to do from time to time is talk about some of the decks that I've built. Some of the many decks that I've built. And today I want to tell you about a mono white deck that was inspired by a friend of mine. That friend was Shivam Butt. I was listening to his podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he had Ben Wheeler on from Loading Ready Run. And they were just talking about mono white. And they kind of brought up a point. Why can't you just build an aggro deck? So I did. And I built Linden, the Steadfast Queen. Now, I built the deck with one thing in mind. Aggro. I want to go fast. And to that point, there are 15 1-drops in the deck. 8 of which are creatures, 3 that can protect, some removal spells, and, well, a Sol Ring. Also to that effect, we're running 16 2-drops, 19 3-drops, and 14 4-drops. And after that, it severely drops off. We're only running 3 5-drops and 2 6-drops. And the only reason I've included them is because they're really good. So our 6-drops are Elspeth, Sun's Champion, and Sun Titan. One pumps creatures and gets rid of big creatures, and, well, the other one is part of my ramp package because it can get lands back from the graveyard. And our 5-drops are Cathar's Crusade, Dictate of Heliod, and God Eternal Oketra, which spams counters, tokens, and is the biggest pump we have at +2/+2. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but the deck only runs 30 lands. And I know everyone in their head right now is going, are you kidding me? But hear me out. Most of the deck only needs 3 lands to function. That's what it boils down to. And this is the kind of deck that wants to draw into more gas than land. Because once people see you as an aggressor, they're going to want to, slow you down. Now, I do get questions in my meta about why I chose to run Linden over some of the other legendary creatures in white. The deck runs a total of 12. The problem is, a lot of them are bigger targets than Linden would be. Something like Kithian, Hero of Akros, Brimaz, King of Oreskos, or God Eternal Ketra. They're just going to draw the removal and the hate at the table. And we kind of just want to sneak in there and get as much damage as we can. But I also have options for when I want to swap out. Say I think I'm going to be playing in a heavy lands meta. I can pull Tomic, Distinguished Activist, to the front. He's just a 2-mana 2/3 with flying that doesn't let your opponents target lands, which is arguably not that good. But in the right circumstances, it can be. Or we could pull out Odric, Lunarch Marshal. He's more suited to a keyword soup deck, but we're running a few. Flying, Indestructible, First Strike. Yeah, he wouldn't be bad in the front either. And I'm running both Thalias. Ostensively, Guardian of Thraben is not the best for the deck, considering how many artifacts and enchantments I run. But at the same time, slowing down my opponents, I feel like it's worth it. Speaking of artifacts, the deck is running 4 actual mana rocks between Arcane Signet, Sol Ring, Fellwar Stone, and Mind Stone. But it also has Oketra's Monument, which helps reduce costs, Pearl Medallion, which reduces costs, Sword of the Animist, which is an attack trigger to get a land, and Sword of Feast and Famine, which, when you hit, untaps your lands. And doubling back to enchantments, I'm running 5 anthems. Honor of the Pure, Glorious Anthem, Always Watching, Force of Virtue, Angelic Voices, and Dictate of Heliod. But I'm also running 3 that I'm calling pseudo-anthems. Those are Citadel Siege, Cathar's Crusade, and Felidar Retreat. Now, Citadel Siege it's on cons, starts throwing counters out. Cathars Crusade starts pumping the team when creatures enter, and we're running a bunch of the ways to make tokens. And Felidar Retreat, if you get into one of the loops where you're digging a land out every turn, can either pump the team or make more creatures. Both very good things. I do have a couple outliers, though. Authority of the Consuls and Legion's Landing. Authority, it's another version of Thalia Heretic Cathar, making your opponent's creatures enter tapped, which can help you get in, but it also pads your life total when creatures enter the battlefield under your opponent's control. And Legion's Landing is an early enchantment that can make an attacker. And once you flip it, can start producing tokens to facilitate more attacking. Now, I want to talk about some alternative forms of ramp, because being in mono white, we don't have the tools that you do in green or black or red or blue. Yeah, so we do what we can. First up, we have Cartographer's Hawk, which pretty new. But when it deals combat damage to a player who controls more lands than you, you can return it to its owner's hand. If you do, you search the library for a Plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. And if you can get this into a loop where you're getting a land and replaying it, and then getting to attack the next turn and get another land and replaying it, the Little Hawk can do work. Next we have Sun Titan, which can get back a couple of the fetches that were running in the deck. And to that point, we're also running brought back Savine's Reclamation and Face Reward. Although they are a little more versatile than that because they can bring permanents back. But 9 times out of 10, I end up bringing a land back. But that's enough about that. Next, let's talk about some protection. Because people are going to want to kill our stuff. A lot. And I think the best determinant I have for people killing my creatures is Luminous Broodmoth. Because when they kill my creatures, if they didn't have flying, they come back with flying. But we are also running Teferi's Protection because it's Teferi's Protection. We're also running Brave the Elements, Fight as One, God's Willing, and Make a Stand. Because, again, people want to kill our creatures. My deck list will be in the description for the video if you want to check it out, along with a bunch of my other decks. I do believe it's coming to the point where I should probably bring this to a close. I do want to say all the normal YouTube stuff. You know, if you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. Hit the like button. Hit the bell for notifications. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm done. I will be back next week with a deep dive onto some Commander Legends. You know, talking about what has been spoiled, things that I want for decks that I might possibly want to build. It's going to be a good time. That brings us to the end of the podcast. I would like to thank Nate and Erica Jacobs for designing my logo, and Cody Mulphy and Ian Foss for allowing me to use a sample of music from their band, The Crypt. The podcast can be found on YouTube by searching Commander's Forge. The podcast is Commander's Forge, that is CMDR_Forge on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at BentzMister, that is BENTZMR. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, here's to fun games and sick plays.